like a few like weeks after that, I thought the Holy Spirit was convicting me to share my testimony with someone there. And so I ended up talking to one of the girls who was one of the leaders at the high school group, and she went to the college group. And she was like, this is a sin more suitable to talk to a man about. And I'm like,
is it? Because I might want to suck his dick. No,
sorry, right, exactly. I'm like, give me an opportunity. I mean, I don't know if I'm gay. Can I try out on you?
If I don't like it, that would be God telling me that it's all going to be okay.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Like in that situation, I just respond with like, well, I take it all back.
Never mind.
Just
this was icky. I don't like it.
Right.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Sam.
And I'm Casey.
And one of Casey's heroes today, maybe not today, but this week, big news, Casey, one of your big time heroes, Ghislaine Maxwell, just got convicted on 5 or 6 counts of some shit.
Yeah. I saw a meme that said, it showed a picture of her and Jeffrey, and it said, true love means finishing each other's sentences.
Yeah.
I thought that was perfect.
Yeah, it was like, it's kind of weird. The conviction was basically calling what they had a pyramid scheme for grooming children. You're like, well, I mean, yeah, I'm surprised that anything stuck, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just so...
Rich people don't get off like that. I mean, they get off plenty of ways, but not like that.
They definitely get off like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think at this point there was so much hype and public interest in the case. Like, it would have been really tough for them to do anything but convict her and have it not turn into it like a, Pizzagate sort of situation.
Yeah.
Like more of a Pizzagate situation.
I mean, then we would have had a, what was that movie? Was it Gerard Butler movie where he's in jail going after the jurors that convicted him or something like that?
Oh, yeah. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Was it
a situation like that on our hands?
Law-abiding citizen, right?
Yeah, that might have been it. It's weird because it stuck, but I don't recall that much of it. I kind of remember the ending being a little bit weak, being like that. Yeah, cool. He had a secret hiding place to get out of prison. I don't know. Felt a little played out, but I'd give the movie a solid 7, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time. I was a very different person when I watched it.
Yeah.
But who doesn't love revenge movies?
I know,
revenge movies may be the best genre.
Dude, I remember watching a revenge movie that I was expecting nothing from. And I think it was called Death. Was it called Death Sentence? It had Kevin Bacon in it.
Yeah.
It was just Kevin Bacon. It was just a pure revenge film. It was Kevin Bacon.
Great, wasn't it?
Fucking people up in a bunch of different ways. Yeah.
Nobody talked about that movie either, but I remember watching it and just being like, this movie is awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. I remember it kind of blew me away. It was one of the first real almost plotless revenge films. Some revenge films have a more Law-Abiding Citizen had a more elaborate plot. So that was kind of fun. But this Kevin Bacon movie had no plot. I mean, it has to be the least amount of plot I've ever seen in a movie where this bad thing happened and these people were responsible. And the entire movie is him just arming himself to the teeth and fucking every single one of them.
Man, the best revenge movie of all time, in my opinion. After we talked to Amber Viola, I sent this movie to her, and she loved it. But it's a Korean movie. It's called I Saw the Devil.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
It is one of my favorite movies of all time.
I have to watch it.
So good and absolutely brutal. If you haven't seen it, oh my God, you got to watch it. It's all in subtitles, but it's fine. You'll love it.
You said Amber ended up watching it?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah,
you guys have a person who takes a movie recommendation and actually watches the movie.
Yeah, I'm
it's
not
one more reason that Amber is the best.
And one reason I'm not the best.
Let's be honest. You don't like a lot of things. that aren't in your orbit already. Like if they're not already a part of the Shipman metaverse, it's not coming in.
Look, I definitely can come off as a hater. I know I went a little hard on country music last week. Look, if I spent time apologizing for every one of my missteps or misspeaks, every intro would just be an apology for the last. So I'm fine just leaving that where it is. I don't mean to offend. If you like, I really, if you know me, I think that this comes out generally if you know me or if you've been listening for a while. I don't care what you like. I really don't. If it makes you feel good, I mean, unless it's like, I don't want you to be a Josh Duggar or anything like that. Then we might that. But reasonably speaking, I don't care what people like. But if I don't like it, I'll have some shade to throw at it. But I won't. It sounds more judgmental than it's supposed. That's all.
You shady fella, very shady.
We have Casey and I have and another friend have Jesse. I've talked about him a million times. You've seen him, heard him on a Fellowship Friday. We have a group text, and Casey sends us recommendations all the time, and so many of those were just like, that's not for me, I guess. It's usually music. I shouldn't say like just general recs, but we get music recs all the time. That's what we do in that for a good portion of it is just like the new music comes out that comes our way, and we just throw it into the chat and let it lay there. Like you don't really expect a response. It's like, hey, if you're looking for something that's kind of like this, this is kind of poppy and fun, check it out. Usually no comments, but a lot of the ones you share, Casey, we're like, yeah, I don't know about that, dude.
There's just so many POD songs that I'm not sure that you've heard before.
It's not, it's like this weird, you listen to a lot of music where the artists have like a shtick. Like,
Well, I know one in particular that you're going to bring up.
I don't even remember it. I don't remember the name. I just remember being like, look, that's too much for me. That's a lot.
Then that one is understandable. It's 12-Foot Ninja.
Okay. But you just about one the other day, and I feel like there was like a theatric to it. Not that always bothers me. Like, I mean, my number one most listened to band this year on Spotify was Sleep Token. And I only learned about them the last quarter of this year, and I listened to them that much. And they have a shtick. And a weird one at that. It's particularly strange. But I guess that's what everyone else is doing, letting it, maybe some people get into it. I would say I will let it go if the music hits me right. Like, I'm not into it. It's not sucking me in. You're not bringing me into your world. That's probably, I bet there's a direct correlation between people who like bands with shticks and also play D&D.
That could be.
Because I don't get sucked into worlds and then participate in them like that. It just feels weird to me.
Yeah, well, I don't set out to find bands with a shtick, but they do seem to find me.
Yeah.
So, okay, this week I've been like watching a bunch of videos and listening to stuff. What do you know about the metaverse?
Like the Facebook shit?
I mean, all of it. Yeah, Facebook is one part of it. Their particular metaverse, but there's like multiple ones, and I'm like fascinated by this now.
Okay, I don't know anything. As far as I know, it's creating like an online reality. I know other people have tried it, but I didn't know that any really existed for people to participate in. Is that not correct? Are you gonna right this ship?
Yeah, there's a bunch of them now. There's like there's one called Sandbox that I guess is a really prominent one. Snoop Dogg owns some land in Sandbox, and somebody paid $500,000 to buy the plot next to Snoop Dogg. So they're Snoop Dogg's neighbor in Sandbox.
What?
Yeah, like buying digital real estate now is a huge thing, and it's bringing a lot of money. And not only that, but there's like people have jobs in these different metaverses that they make whatever the currency is in that particular one. Like Sandbox has its own cryptocurrency that's traded on exchanges and stuff like that. There's like Decentraland. There's a bunch of them. I'm like just getting like kind of scratching the surface, but I feel like it's ripe for a scam. And
oh yeah,
that's all I want. Dude. I just want to find like an angle on a particular, like on a scam that nobody's exploited yet.
Yeah, and they're not illegal yet, right? You get into it right before there's like any, like you can't get held accountable for your actions in there because the law hasn't caught up to it yet.
I'm not talking about stealing anybody's money. I'm talking about people in a frenzy spending money with me before whatever it is burns out and goes away and nobody cares anymore.
Wait, you want to spend your own money? That's not a scam.
No, they give me their money.
That's stealing money. That's basically
I'm selling. If I'm selling something.
Right, but I'm saying at some point what you're probably thinking of will have laws surrounding it in guiding the practices a little bit more. It's the Wild West right now. Well, is what I'm saying.
I'm sure big government get their hooks in it eventually.
It's like selling
squeezing the life out of it.
Yeah. It's on Kratom, or was it
that Sativa? I have experience with. Maybe I should be selling like digital Kratom.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of stuff. Like I just heard a piece on NPR about how from this guy who, I don't know, he did a lot of shit with magic mushrooms and wrote about it and did a lot back in the 60s before they were illegal. I guess it wasn't until like mid 60s that shrooms became illegal, which is kind of cool. Like that means like people are just doing those bad boys left and right.
Just picking them off turds and popping them in.
Yeah. It's like, hey, this is fine. And no one was like, it's weird because the legality sets the tone, right? Before it was illegal, people were probably like, that's not really for me, but it's off everybody's radar and they're not really worried about it. And the second something's made illegal, they go, it must be really bad for you. Like when weed became illegal, like people used to smoke weed and it'd be like, that's not for me. Or it probably didn't really cross their path. And if it did, some people were like, I do this. And they'd be like, I don't think I do. And they moved on. But no hype was generated around it until there was like legal repercussions for doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody just sort of accepted like, well, the government wouldn't ban this if it was good for you or if there wasn't like horrible consequences. Meanwhile, you could like answer an ad in the back of a magazine and buy like radium infused protein powder.
Yeah.
That just eats your bottom jaw off.
Like the government doing stuff that hurts people. I mean, they outlawed mushrooms around the same time they well, I guess 10 years or so before they started the practice of redlining. And that never would have been, I mean, they wouldn't do anything that's bad or wrong, right?
No. And I'm sure they had their reasons. They had probably tested it on a black community somewhere.
Yeah, no shit, dude. MK Ultra, dude. Wasn't that what MK Ultra was on? Well, that was like mind control, but
Tuskegee Project was
Tuskegee,
the one where they infected black community with syphilis,
yeah. But MK Ultra was like, let's just like drop acid tabs in people's Diet Coke and see what happens to them.
Yeah, there was a lot of that, like dosing unsuspected people. They actually I listened to a thing last year where they talked about like them testing biological weapons on Navy sailors, like in the 60s, I think it was.
Really?
Yeah, like purposely infected a ship and, observed the consequences and the results and stuff. That's the least helpful explanation of what happened. But, you could probably Google from there, I would imagine.
Google it, and if he's wrong, just message us.
Just go to prisonplanet.com and search Navy.
Are you serious?
Prison Planet is InfoWars Lite. Or InfoWars Ultimate.
I've never heard
Don't
of it.
do that.
Yeah, you'll get some malware for sure.
Yeah, they'll put you on a list, start watching your peeling through your phone looking for buffalo helmets and whatnot.
Dude, I feel like there's one thing that we got into in this episode that I do want to slightly address before we introduce our guest. In this episode, we talked about chemical castration because it came up in relation to a previous conversation we had about Josh Tucker.
Yes.
And I was mostly right about it. You were dogging on me pretty hard, but it is I mentioned it might have been a pill. It's not true. It's an injection. But and it is temporary, and it basically makes you essentially asexual. Now, I did only some marginal research, so I only have the cliff notes here, but I think it's super interesting, and I'm just going to set the record straight before the episode plays, so that way when you're hearing it, you already know that I'm an idiot and that I don't know what I'm talking about. I thought about just addressing it in the next week, so I sounded reasonable, and you had mostly forgotten everything I said by then, but whatever. It's fresh in my mind because I was interested in it after feeling like I might be wrong. So there are countries that have allowed people to serve shorter sentences, like pedophiles to serve shorter sentences if they undergo chemical castration for like their parole. So like they get out early, but they're on parole for I think the remainder of their sentence, but they undergo chemical castration. Some people do it, some people don't. There was like a study where it was like 40 out of 48 people who subjected themselves to the study said that they had no real sexual urges at all. They essentially were asexual. Some of the controversy around it is like is the issue of agency, right? So like, is someone making like a free will choice if they're choosing chemical castration versus prison time? Because I said there were in the episode, I said there were basically no side effects to it, and that's not true. It's like very rare, but potentially serious side effects. And they actually use it the same procedure to treat certain cancers. I might have been prostate cancer, possibly testicular cancer. Wikipedia it if you
it's
really
down
care.
There. It's down around that neighborhood.
Something has to do with the things that have to do
dangling participle.
Exactly, the gonads. But yeah, so they use it to treat cancer because it like limits your ability to produce sperm and kind of I don't know. I guess it minimizes the need for certain things down there. But so that it actually does serve a purpose outside of just trying to make pedophiles not want to have sex with underage children. So, and of course, usually when dealing with cancer, people are willing to accept more risk, right? Like chemotherapy, it's basically poison. And you go, that's fine. I don't want to die. So, but when it comes to like prison, they're like, well, you can choose this or just stay in prison. And some people say that it's not a fair choice, given the side effects, and it's hard for people to make a conscious decision to weigh that versus their freedom. I don't really know. I don't feel like I have a horse in that race because that doesn't sound like an ethical gray area to me. It's just like, do you want to serve 20 years or 10 and then be chemically castrated for 10 of those? I mean, feels like a reasonable choice.
It's more of a choice than not having a choice at all. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I'm not worried about
like
it.
You have the option.
Yeah. I mean, just explain the side effects. I mean, it's hard for me to feel like it's unfair. I mean, you're in jail because you're a pedophile. So I'm fine with you being there. I mean, I don't care what choice you make. It's like,
yeah, or a rapist or something like that.
Right.
I mean, assuming they were rightfully convicted.
Yeah.
Which there's always going to be a segment that's not. I don't know. That's I think about it more and more about how few things are black and white in life. Like there's just no easy answer on whether or not that's a reasonable thing to put in front of a person who's looking at 20 years or 30 years in prison. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, I mean, it's an option that those people didn't have before. They can always serve out the rest of the prison. I don't know. There's no easy way around it.
One of the criticisms of the studies is that because there aren't a lot of in-depth studies on it, they're small numbers. They're good information, but the argument against them says that when you're dealing with people who are willing to trade their freedom, I mean their lack of freedom for chemical castration, that you're looking at people who favor freedom over sexual pleasure or experience. So when you're giving people the option, the people who are going to take that option are the ones who value freedom more highly. which would make them less likely to repeat offend anyway. So this 40 out of 48 number may be skewed because all of them voluntarily would have chosen it, which means they generally prefer their freedom. But for the people who don't choose it, if it was a forced procedure, we don't have any data on that. So if they're like, I'll just take my 20 years, and then we come up with some scheme that says, look, you do your 20, and then for the rest of your life or for the next 10 years, whatever, we'll chemically castrate you, and then see how that goes. We don't have a lot of good data to say that they won't repeat because we're only collecting data on people who value freedom more highly. Am I being clear or making sense?
Yeah. So what option is available to genetically female sex offenders?
I don't know that there is.
Do they just have to like sit on a sticky rat trap every morning? Just wear that around for the day, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I recall.
It's wild that I guessed that.
No. Yeah,
like right off the specific cuff.
Because I said no, but then I remembered that I read that right before you said it. So.
That's all right. Reading comprehension's low for homeschoolers.
I mean, it took the information I just regurgitated. I rehearsed all week. So
the documentary that I referenced when we were talking through that whole thing is called Heaven's Gate: The Cult of Cults. It's on HBO. It's definitely worth a watch. Marshall Applewhite was a nut. He was nuts. So fun watch. So before we finish, I had this story that I keep forgetting to tell.
Okay.
And there's no point to it other than it's just fun because it's like genetic or a generational disconnect sort of thing. So Thanksgiving, we went over to my grandparents' house, and I mean they have the internet, my grandma plays games online and stuff like that, but no, they don't do a lot on there. And so I go over there for Thanksgiving, and my grandma's like, "Oh, Casey, come here. I got to show you something. So I come over there, and she's so excited to show me this. It's like a junk mail mailer, right? And on the front of it, it's got like T-shirts and coffee mugs and, all sorts of little like doodads and knickknacks and things like that say, it's aggressive thing you wouldn't understand. So it's like got our last name on all these different things, and you can order this crap, right? And she was like so excited that they had sent them a this junk mail, which is basically like an analog pop-up.
Yeah.
And she comes over and she's like, "That's pretty neat, isn't it?" And I'm like, I can't believe I'm looking at it. Yes, that's neat. Where's the X on it?
Wait, so this just wasn't ordered. It was like it's like a sales tactic or something where you just
it's like getting a cheap oil change coupon in the mail from the local like Jiffy Lube or whatever. It's a literal mailer with all this crap on it, just like you would see on like a Facebook ad or something.
She just was like blown away by it.
She was very excited. She was holding on to it, and then about 30 minutes later, my grandpa came in. And hey, how's it going? He goes, "Oh, Nancy, did you show him?" I was like, "Yeah, the mail. Yeah, she showed me." Just
oh my god,
it was so funny.
They're so excited about it. I love it.
Very excited. So our guest this week. This is a fun episode. I think you're gonna really like this conversation. One of our new favorite people is George Azar. George runs the social media accounts and just written a book under the name My Gay Church Days. And it's the story of how he grew up, in a pretty normal home, and somewhere in like junior high, early high school, he got evangelized and really threw himself into evangelicalism, all the while kind of coping with his sexuality, which he didn't fully understand and embrace yet. He ends up becoming a pastor, and then later has to leave the church, the faith, embrace, his true identity and stuff. And it is just a great story about, coming of age and figuring out who you are and just like all the bumps in the road along the way. And I don't know. He is a super funny guy. Very nice. We had a great time talking with him, and you should check out his book, which drops in February.
Yeah, it's February. He mentions it at the end, and we'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, mid February, I believe.
And you can also follow him. He's listed under My Gay Church Days on Instagram, and I think pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah, he was so much fun. He's just, again, we've had a few lately, but one of those people like you hit it off with. It feels like you've been friends for a while. You make jokes that you might not necessarily make with people you just met, and they go over great. So we all just had a good time, walking through a story together, but also taking a lot of rabbit trails, and just telling funny stories and joking about all things related to growing up in the evangelical world. So I think you'll all really enjoy this conversation. Holy shit, everyone, it's 2022. And what better way to bring in the new year than with Captain Cecil's coffee?
New year, new coffees. With flavors like Atlantic and Daymark, there is a host of single source blends, one that is surely going to fit your palate and make your morning a lot better.
Captain Cecil's proudly donates 10% of all sales to various lighthouse preservation organizations across New England. Going into the holiday season, he offered us a very generous promo code of 20%. But because Captain Cecil's loves us and the growing up Christian community so much, he's decided to extend that 20% to our listeners going into the new year.
So go to CaptainCecilsCoffee.com and remember to enter the promo code GrowingUpChristian at checkout for 20% off your order. And of course, all orders over $50 get free shipping. That's CaptainCecilsCoffee.com. Enter promo code GrowingUpChristian.
Hey everyone, we're back with our guest, George Azar. I'm super excited to talk to you, George. So thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
So even though we'll probably obviously do a bit of an intro for you ahead of time, just to launch it, right out the gate, you can give us kind of like the quick cliff notes, right? So you recently wrote a book called My Gay Church Days. Through Instagram, I saw that you just had a bunch of copies delivered to your house, which looks really exciting. That must be such a good feeling to have your first book, a bunch of copies delivered to your house.
It's also very nerve-wracking because I called my marketer. I was like, I don't know about this. I want to change it. And he's like, you already have 100 copies in your apartment. Stop.
Yeah, you kind of missed the vote on a little. That last minute editing's not going to really fly at this point, is it?
Literally.
Now, have you considered like the like Tucker Carlson strategy where you just buy like 100,000 copies yourself just to kind of up the numbers?
Yeah, of course. I mean, isn't that the only way to do it?
Mark Driscoll did that too. He made that move.
Way to drop my idol.
Yeah, I can tell you have a strong connection to Mark Driscoll.
Oh yeah, we hang out on the weekends. We're pretty tight.
So
and Tucker.
Let's I want to, obviously you don't want to give away the entire book. You want to leave some stuff for the imagination, but I think I'd love to just, kind of get the snapshot of it. Let's kind of get into your life a little bit. Because my understanding is you were an evangelical pastor. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
And you threw it all away. You could have made you and Mark, man, could have gone big time together.
Yeah, I know. I mean, being celibate my entire life, it really was just very appealing to me. But I knew
should have joined the priesthood, man.
Exactly. Become a nun. less of a stumble or a struggle.
Right.
Yeah.
I bet there's a lot of gay priests. There has to be, right? They're like, I can't have gay sex.
Speculating.
So.
I mean, it's either eunuch or gay, and that's why they go into it in the first place.
Yeah.
So. Either way, it's a cover up.
We don't talk about eunuchs enough. I think that's
something. Is that still a thing?
I don't know. It's in the Bible, and people like to skirt over that one. So I feel like we should bring that back into common conversation. I don't know that that's something that people still call themselves. I'm not sure. I don't know a lot about that word, or if that's even entirely what that meant in the Bible.
Yeah, I think it's just chemical castration now. I don't know.
Yeah.
So this is still a thing that people actively do. Like, this is a practice that's still in place?
Oh yeah, actually, I did hear about it in the gay space too. I mean, to the point where like people were considering it because their struggle with same-sex attraction was such a struggle for them, and so it was like I don't want to misrepresent anything, but I was a part of Exodus Ministries. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
Oh,
yes, I watched the Netflix documentary. Pray Away? Was that what
Pray
it was?
Away, yeah.
Oh my God, we definitely got to talk about that.
I actually haven't watched it yet because it's so triggering for me. Like, I saw some of the people that they're interviewing. I'm like, I know that person. Well, not know them, personally, but I remember them at the conferences and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember just some crazy discussions about that where, like people were so burdened by their attraction for men that they even considered chemical castration as an option. I don't know anyone personally who did it, but yeah, it's radical. I mean, it's so out there.
Who also took that route was Marshall Applewhite of the Heaven's Gate cult.
Oh. And that's super.
That was like a big tenet of their cult, like towards the end, because you know how cults do, kind of escalates as time goes on, and
they get a little bit more extreme sometimes.
They want to one up each other.
Yeah, and I guess
Olympics,
right? He struggled with like same-sex attraction in his mind. That's what he labeled it as, and that was part of the like impetus behind pushing his followers to go through that chemical castration process. And not all of them did. There was a documentary that came out like last year on Heaven's Gate, and it's wild because it's like there was one guy that left the cult because he didn't want to go through the castration process. And this guy, I mean, life didn't get better for him after he left the cult. And
that happens with people who leave cults sometimes.
Yeah, and he's like literally like on the documentary lamenting the fact that he didn't just go through with it and die with the rest of the cult members.
Wow.
It's wild.
Oh my God, this is
Shit has to get real bad for you to feel that way,
right? Well, did you watch Fire Island?
No,
I keep meaning to.
It reminds me, there's a guy in there who like he was like the main coordinator or something, and he talked about having to suck dick for the I guess it was like TSA or something like that in order to get water through. And so it just reminds me of that where it's like you go to those extremes, like
that seems counterproductive. Like you're working up a sweat to get a drink,
Right. I'm like, how good looking was he? Like what, it's like
a lot of follow up too.
Exactly. I got a lot of questions.
We got to talk about the conversion right here because there's diminishing returns at some point. My lips are dry.
Do you have any chapstick?
Right? Or Vaseline? I mean, come on.
Not to derail this even more, I promise we're going to talk about you, but talking about chemical castration, I almost brought it up, but we had just been talking for too long in a recent intro when we were talking about Josh Duggar and what to do with people like him. And I don't know if it's come up here, but the conversation around like chemical castration for people with deviant desires like that, where like you're into children or whatever, has come up because I guess chemical castration's not permanent. Like it's you have to re-up on that. So like I think it's even a pill. They might have even like maybe not, maybe it's a shot. I'm probably way off base with the pill thing. I just remember listening to someone talk about chemical castration as a requirement for people who have been in other countries who have come out of prison for.
Are you reading InfoWars right now? Is that
I don't know. Yeah, seriously. But listen, InfoWars, no. You know what he would do?
Okay,
like, let's put them all on an island. That's what. Yeah, but it's because you do have to like re-up on it, so it's not like permanent. But it basically, I guess, it eliminates your sex drive essentially. So there have been people who like there have been pedophiles who are like, sign me up. Like, I don't want to be this person.
Yeah.
And then you have, I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. I don't know enough about it to really keep talking about it.
Something tells me that doesn't work the way that they're asserting it does.
I think it might. I'm going to look
Sex
it up.
Sex drive has a lot to do with a lot of different things and not just like, oh, my hormone levels.
No, right. Just because you're horny all the time, Casey, doesn't mean everybody else is. Okay. Stop comparing everyone else to you.
Work
you
up
are,
somehow.
You're an animal, and we all know it. So it comes through. It's just in your voice.
I love it. Well, you've definitely given me some homework. I'm definitely going to look that up after.
I'm going to look that up because I have to apologize for this later on, probably. So. All right, George, let's talk about you. We've been going on for 10 minutes with random shit. So where do we want to start? I feel like there's a million places. Where do you want to start? Let's talk about the world you grew up in.
What's your earliest memory?
I remember coming through the vaginal wall. That was actually pretty interesting. And
were you not breastfed as a kid? Is that why you're gay? Is that
exactly? I was like, oh, I am never touching this again. That was disgusting. Early childhood memory. Actually, so yeah, I actually was, I was raised around religion. My family was, on my dad's side was Episcopalian. We were, they were more of the liberal leaning. When I became a young Republican, I started to question the premise of a lot of what the church was teaching. And I mean, there was a gay priest, like they were, pretty much, on the more liberal side of it. And so I think I remember in middle school, because that's when I started to get into politics. It was kind of my way of like relating to my dad. He was, listening to like Rush Limbaugh and watching Fox News and all of that. And which
that's this a day, weird dynamic then. If he's in a more liberal mainline tradition, but is coming at it from a... I'm a little curious about that. So did he have was that a conversation? If you said there was a gay priest at the church that your dad was at?
Yeah. So eventually we got to the point where my dad and I decided we weren't going to go anymore because it was like, I think they were like, the priest was stepping down and then they had a lesbian pastor come up and we're like, that's it. That's where we draw the line,
You got to draw it
it's
somewhere.
A free for all over there.
It literally, it's a gamble. I mean,
it's like it's already you're already a step down because you're gay. Now you're a woman. You're not supposed to teach. Right. Like we can't combine. Like we conceded for a while, but this is just too far.
This is too far. Exactly. It's like Jesus drawing the line in the sand. I mean, but yeah, it was interesting because my dad, I mean, what perplexed me knowing my dad, like he was a very generous, it still is a very generous, kind-hearted man. And so his politics was so questionable for me. But yeah, I ended up subscribing to that because it was a way for me to relate to my father. We stopped going to church. My mom was born and raised in Lebanon, went to Catholic school, was taught by nuns. So she came from a very religious background, but never went to church when she was here in the States. And we ended up, just kind of having this season where I just wasn't going to church. I knew of Jesus. My grandma was super religious. I was super close to my grandma, kind of formed a bond with her. My mom and I had a difficult relationship, to say, and I write about it in the book. It was definitely, I bonded more with my father, and that's kind of, again, why I went into politics.
Okay.
Yeah, so we ended up, I was wildly tortured in middle school. I mean, even I write about it in the book, and it's supposed to come off as a joke, but I think some people think of it as pathetic. But even the math, the math nerds made fun of me. That's how bad the situation was. It was not.
Where's the Young Republicans group?
Exactly. Excuse me, sir.
What part of the country is this happening in?
This is in. So I was born and raised in Santa Barbara. So this is California. Okay. This
California
is not,
native.
Right. Oh yeah, born and raised. So this wasn't deep South or anything like that. It was still very. I don't know. The 90s were just kind of a weird time for everybody. It was like this, like, you know, more conservative leaning, and then 9/11 hit, and then everybody kind of just, you know, flocked towards the Republican Party, or at least the ideals of the Republican Party. And the churches, you know, jumped on that bandwagon, and and all of that.
It is strange to think that, like, you evangelized your dad towards a more fundamentalist view of Christianity, and by doing so, you guys left church.
Yes.
Everything about that is like,
whoa. Mind blown. Right. This isn't Jesus-like enough.
It's a real choose your own adventure story, you know?
It really is.
So if you guys left the church, you said you were in high school. That's when you left the church?
So this was around middle school.
Okay.
Yeah. So then, you know, I was wildly tortured in middle school, and ended up just kind of like, you know, I had like suicidal thoughts, and I was wildly depressed. So I was like prime for the picking for evangelical Christianity.
Did you feel, was this before you started thinking you might be gay? Did that thought even cross your mind? Like, did you have, I don't know how, I guess maybe given the fact that I just was am straight, but like, I don't have a framework for that of like, cause like I could imagine someone thinking like repressing that. I could imagine how someone could repress that feeling and not recognize it for what it was. So I'm curious as to what that experience was for you as a middle schooler.
No, absolutely. It's funny because before puberty hit, like I would flirt around with girls. Like I had like one girl that I had a crush on in like 4th and 5th grade. But as I started to get older and getting closer to puberty, I remember actually my parents had gotten our first computer. I mean, that was a big deal. It was like an e-machines or something like that. And, you know, it was dial up and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Remember all that? Like the
AOL
CDs.
That's a tone that kids will just, kids won't hear.
I would danger.
I almost want to like try to do the tone right now, but I will embarrass myself. But everybody knows it, so I don't have to.
You know, I was actually having the same inclination too, and I was like, no, probably not a good sound. But yeah, I remember like I discovered porn, and I would look at straight porn, and my brother is actually gay as well, and he was older than me. He actually came out a lot sooner. He was in middle school when he came out. I was
really?
in elementary. Oh yeah, yeah. It was interesting.
That must have been how many siblings do you have? Is it just you and your brother, or do you have
older brother, younger sister? So sandwiched right. What is it? Middle child syndrome or
2 for
like
3,
that?
man. That's oh wow, that's tough for your like. I don't know if that was tough for your family, but I imagine that they were like, "What did we do wrong?" At some
Literally.
point.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And that was part. I mean, the '90s were all about that. It was, you know, whether you were in the secular realm and you shrinked it away by going to therapy, and that's actually what happened to my brother. I mean, my parents were very well intentioned, but they were wildly ignorant on the subject. You know, like I give them so much grace because, like, you know, it definitely was one of those things where I saw my brother and how that put a wedge between my parents, and I was like, I don't want to touch that. But I knew like I had these gay thoughts. So like I was looking at, you know, porn, and while I was watching straight porn, I was looking at the guy and fantasizing about being the woman in the situation. And it scared me shitless. I was like, what is this? You know?
Meanwhile, when I was that age and I found porn, if I accidentally saw I would always only try to look at naked women, because if I saw actual just like straight heterosexual sex, I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna be gay if I see this penis. I can't do it. Like, it would terrify me. The thought of seeing just regular ass straight porn scared the shit out of me. That's how afraid I was of being gay growing up evangelical in the 90s. So it's like, I know healthy. I can't imagine. It's so healthy.
I love it. But it's true. Like the 90s, it was still taboo. I mean, it was 1973 when they took homosexuality out of the publication for psychology about it being a mental illness.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh man, yeah. What do they call that?
Wild.
Oh gosh, I have it in the book.
I can't remember the term for it, but
the MSR? No, ASR. Is it ASR? Oh no, that's actually, I don't know.
ASMR? Is that the
ASMR? There it is.
Popcorn really close to the microphone.
I hate that shit so much.
Right?
Disgusting.
It's so gross, especially when they
terrible.
smack. Oh.
Yeah. People get so horny for that, and I don't get it. Some people get it's sexual for some people, but for some people it's just like they would listen to that going to sleep. They're like, let me turn on the sound of someone smacking their lips to fall asleep.
Right.
Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like
whispering.
That is actually, I don't want to get too into it and I don't want to offend anybody, but that is a mental illness, and we should address that.
It's a sin.
It's got to be a result of just total overstimulation. You know, it's like
the result of too many silent dinners. Like your parents ate too quietly, and now you're just like crazy about hearing people chew.
Oh my god, I love
like the equivalent of like walking out of an Avengers movie and being like, I think I'm gonna go silent film for a bit.
Never seen an Avengers movie, so I can't relate to the feeling.
That's the craziest thing you've said so far.
Yeah, it's possible I haven't seen a Marvel movie in the past 10 years. I'd have to think about it.
I mean, even I've seen a Marvel movie. Yeah, no, but it's interesting because like that like in the 90s, I mean, that generation pretty much inherited that belief system. So it was like, I remember people thinking that, homosexuality is a byproduct of child rearing. And that actually is what I learned in conversion therapy, which we could talk about later.
Yeah. Casey and I recently mentioned that was like, I was always told like, they were probably molested as a kid. And you're like, so then you like walk around when you meet people who are gay and then all of a sudden your instant thought is, oh, I bet they were molested. That's such a fucked up thing to make people think about other people, right?
Absolutely. It's absolutely nuts. And that's what I love, side note, like what Luke Wilson's doing and all of that. And just changing that fucking narrative and anyway, cool guy. And I know you guys had
Luke.
We love him. We love Luke. Who doesn't love Luke? That's why he's showing up everywhere.
Evangelicals.
Yeah.
Liberty University.
Yeah, they could do without him.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I saw what happened to my brother. And I was just like, no can do. And that's also another reason why I turned to Republicanism, because, they had such a disdain for the homosexuals and, they're the gay agenda and all of that.
The gay agenda.
Yeah, exactly.
So classic.
But yeah,
classic
I ended
gays.
up, that's all they want is just, free,
they want to make other rights. People gay. It's so weird.
Right. It's like, exactly.
That's not what's happening.
Right. They just want to be treated equally. Oh my God. How dare they?
Like, we see you people. We don't want you gay. We don't want you here. You're
right. Right. You don't belong here.
So like that time period around 9/11 and stuff. I mean, Sam and I were pretty young at the time, but still, I mean, if you were conscious at that point, there was like a enormous cultural shift that people who grew up afterwards probably are just never going to get a good feel for what it was like. But we talked a lot about, how conservatism and evangelicalism are just like inseparable in today's culture and stuff. A lot of people profess evangelicalism and talk about it as like the most important thing in their life, but their political affiliation is what they talk about. It's what they argue about. It's what they consume all day long, through media and stuff like that. Like, I'm curious, was for you at that age, was the conservative political, affiliation, was that part of things equally as important as Christianity? Was that what you were passionate about and Christianity was a piece of it? Like, what was the dynamic there?
Oh yeah, I was horny for the Republican Christian narrative. I was like, yeah, like when I got saved in my freshman year of high school, someone had introduced me to Jesus, blah blah blah, and I ended up I went to this church. So I'm a byproduct of the Calvary Chapel movement.
Another one. Man, we've had a lot of people who are affected by. I mean, that movement was huge. They were.
Oh yeah.
Their reach was big, and I don't know what it was about them.
Slimy tendrils.
There was something. I don't know if they put a specific emphasis on evangelizing in a way that maybe other people did. I don't know if they had certain. I don't know what their pull was, but it worked. They had it was a machine.
A successful franchise.
Yeah.
That's like
100%.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, they really went after like the surfer hippie movement. I remember the church. So I got saved out of Calvary Chapel, and then shortly after that, I was going to like the college group there. The pastor of the college group decided he was going to start his own church, and it was like a sister church to a Calvary Chapel, but he was very much of that surfer mentality, and but I just remember, I would go to Calvary Chapel and the other church that I was going to. And I mean, I remember this pamphlet, like they had, biblical ways to vote because, prior to, yeah, like I remember you guys were talking about it at one time too, like where it was like, here's the specific Bible verses. And it was like, the war in Iraq is justified by something in like Proverbs or Psalms, like just some random ass verse. And then it was like abortion. It was like clear that God was against abortion. And, so they didn't outright say because the Johnson Act was actually effective at the time. And then dump truck Trump came along and kind of stripped that away. But
you didn't even have to, like, it's not like they legally made any changes or legislatively, I should say, made any changes. It's just like churches all of a sudden were like, vote Trump, vote Republican, right. And then nothing happened. So then everyone was like, oh shit, I guess we can say this now. It's like not a problem. It's like, right. And they got political. It was weird. That's something that blows my mind.
I think it's just marketing. I think that's what it comes down to is like, what can you get people excited about? What can you hook people with and give them community and give them the sense that like, it's us in this room versus them and we got to stick together. I think like that conservative ideology has a much better marketing hook than Christianity does right now.
Absolutely.
And you can kind of use the Christianity as like that's like the hook, but conservatism is what carries the weight of the whole thing,
Like they get you with the eternal salvation, but they keep you with the conservative values because going out of your way to like, I don't want to dig it too much in the way that's like going out of your way to like help people and be a good person. Because we've all talked about and our, like you even mentioned with your parents, George, like the grace that you have for them. Like we all know that a lot of the people in the world we grew up in, despite maybe some negative outcomes, regardless of intentions, there weren't bad people and they cared about, like they did care about people. But I do feel like I've seen a shift in the past, like 6 or 7 years where it's become more isolated and insular and less about others, practically speaking, even like less outreach in a practical way. Not so much like evangelism, but like, how do you help the poor or whatever? Like, I feel like I've seen way less of an emphasis on that than I did growing up, despite it being interwoven with conservative politics. I just don't see it as much anymore. And I think that's a shift that's taken place, but I do think it's important to occasionally recognize that what we grew up in, it wasn't just like in the group. It wasn't
it's
insidious.
Just a fundamentally different way of looking at how you help people. That's what it is. It's not that like nobody cares about the poor or whatever else in those environments. It's just they view helping them in a totally different way than
the church's job, really. Like it's not the government's job, it's the church's job. And so then some people would do it. Granted, if you had a church of 500 people, you might get 15 volunteers to do a clothing drive or something like that. So that was always interesting to me when I was still conservative politically, but wanting to find a way to invest and get involved in my community was like the lack of volunteers. I always found that frustrating at that point.
No, absolutely. And I think it's become more tribal. Like, it's like, this is the group that we're a part of, it's us versus them, it's like we have, and it's almost like sensationalized by absolutism of the gospel, where it's like, well, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, so therefore everybody must bow down and submit, and it's like you mix that with like the radicalization of the Republican Party, and it's a shitstorm. It's like people are just protecting themselves. They're not looking out for any, like, and you're right, like there is grace for those who are naively. I think that there's a lot of it's kind of like what Jesus was talking about, the false teachers. It's like that they know what they're doing. Like the people that are leading the cause, the ones that are teaming up against Trump and radicalizing their flock so-and-so are the ones who should be held accountable. It's, so not to get too far into this, but my side job is I'm a CPA. I do taxes for a living. And when I was a young CPA, I ended up, I had a desire, after leaving the church. It was during my angry phase after leaving my faith and everything. I was like, I'm going to come after the church. And it was like during when Joel Osteen was like, barricading people out of his church during the hurricanes and all that. And I'm like, fuck you, like
close the doors. I'm trying to get the money in the wall.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh my God. That's literally the only reason why he was doing that.
I hope it doesn't get too wet in here.
Oh my God, I love it.
Joel Osteen was the wettest thing in the room at the time. But.
Literally. Oh my God, I love the memes that are coming out with all the stuff that's going on there. But anyway, I just remember, like, I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go get the it's a tax form 990. It's nonprofits are required to report the 990s, make it public domain. And so when I went to, I looked at like Focus on the Family, I was looking at that Lakewood Church, like all of that. And I'm like, where the hell are they? And I'm naive. I was a new CPA. I was like, where the hell are their 990s? I went on the IRS's website and I realized that religious organizations are the only types of organizations that are exempt from posting their financial records. So effectively, there's absolutely no accountability. Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. And the reason is because the First Amendment, right? But I'm like, wait a second. So if separation in church and state is favorable for the church, then they'll be about it. But then when it's not favorable for the church, they're all against it. And it's just like this conundrum. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, it's
a solid point. The church that I go to, I'm friends with the pastor, and he's talked about that. Like we've talked about and even he's just like, I'm uncomfortable with how easy this is. He's like, I legit there is legit no accountability here. Like the only accountability he has is like a few people who actually pay attention to it. Like it's like, but it's like, it is crazy. He's mentioned that to me a couple of times. Just like, it's wild how this is. He's like, to file taxes at the end of the year. It's literally just like, beep, boop, done. Yeah. Like there's nothing to it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, like Greg Locke said, he's like, man, predatory religion is like the only free market left in this country.
Oh my God. Love it. It's so true though. Like it's funny because I actually thought about becoming one of the sustaining donors or whatever the hell they were called with Lakewood Church, Joel Caesar, just so I could get my hands on the financial statements. I'm like, just give me 1 year, like
it's like got to be a shareholder.
$1 a month.
Right, exactly. I will do it to expose you.
And then you would get at least $100 back afterwards, because that's how that works, right?
Yeah, tenfold prosperity gospel.
All right, let's jump back to you. You said you in high school is when you got saved. Is that like, was it through someone with the Calvary Chapel kind of movement? So obviously, like that worked with you because it was you had your conservative politics and your conservative evangelicalism. So I'm guessing because you're already on board with one, it kind of was like not a lot left. Is you were probably, growing up with your dad, at least part of the church, you being in it at some point. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing
you religion had to be passionate about it
in the back of your head a little bit.
Headed with it,
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was interesting because when like the main reason why I turned to Christianity was, I was depressed, and I was actually working with a girl. I was working at an ice cream shop, and she went to Calvary Chapel, and so she like I would always party with like the kids that were like kind of like the recluse ones, like, and then whenever it was her and I one-on-one, we would have like conversations and stuff. But I ended up like, I write about it in detail in the book, but I ended up humiliating her one night, with a guy that just came back from a missions trip. I had no idea what missions were. But anyway, the next morning we were working together, and I just told her, I said, I'm so sorry for how I humiliated you. There's something missing in my life. And she's like, Jesus. And I was like, what?
There we go.
Like, there we go. It's just like,
and me telling you that makes me feel a lot better.
Literally. Literally. I'm gonna rack up those brownie points. Like,
my work here is done.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, she invited me to youth group, and I was like blown away. Like, it was one of those cool youth groups, like they had like skateboard ring, and like, kids were outside, kicking the ball and all of that. And I was just so intimidated by everybody there. I was just like, oh my God, all these people are super cool. I'm a loser. Everybody at school knows I'm a loser. And anyway, a couple of weeks later, I ended up, went to an altar call, received prayed the salvation message, and then I became a Christian. And then, but what was so appealing about it was, well, one, I was dealing with, my suicidal thoughts and depression. I was like, oh, my answer is Jesus. But the other thing was they had a cure for homosexuality. It was like Romans chapter 1, like it was taught on frequently. And it was like, oh, okay, so I'm very fearful of my sexuality. I haven't told anybody about it. I've potentially gotten exposed, but I was able to blame it on my brother or whatever. And so I was like, this is going to be my way. Like, this is, so I ended up, it just was like, it was the cure all. It was like, okay, cool. I have, they align with my politics, and they have a cure for my greatest insecurity. Here we go.
It must have such a big pull. One of the things I remember hearing, like, recently what was I listening to? I don't know. It's whatever. A conversation I've had over the past year is like, it might have been even with Pray Away, the Netflix film Pray Away, because it's like, oh, well, all these kids are willingly signing up for this, right? It's like, well, is it really that bad? I mean, a lot of these kids chose to be here, but hearing you and the stories of so many others, it's like, no one's making these choices. It's like to hear that you have the remedy for this desire that I've been told is unnatural. Mm-hmm. Even outside of religious communities, it wasn't that accepted in the 90s, maybe by some really liberal thinkers, but it just wasn't. I mean, we've talked before about how the F word was thrown around all the time, and it was just like no one cared, and it was just so that pull makes so much sense, even though it's like it is the antithesis of what you need. It's not like it wasn't the antidote. It's not the remedy, but it's
an escape route.
Yeah.
It's like an escape route is what motivates so many decisions in all of our lives. And religion is just one of those. But it's like I'm going to buy in wholeheartedly to this financial book that I bought because that's my escape route from debt and bad credit.
Yeah,
it's all
Shout
right
out
here.
Dave Ramsey.
I'm just going to do this, and it's all going to go away, and it's going to be great.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like continually buying the lottery ticket for whatever hard thing in your life doesn't have a simple answer. I feel like
absolutely. I mean, to everything. I mean, it's funny because I was listening to a few of the past podcasts, and talking about. Do you remember gotquestions.org? Where like it was like this like website where you could like ask any question, and they had the Bible and the correct Christian response.
Did they have like billboards?
Was it?
Yeah, they had billboards like in random places and all that. Yeah, Got Question. It's still around, actually. I recently went on there because I was like,
is it really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Gotquestions.org. Check it out if you want to become
ad
radical.
Space here is pretty much exclusively like smiling babies.
Was this related
we have
to
a lot of those billboards?
This didn't have anything to do with Hank Hanegraaff. Hanegraaff? What was his name? Hanegraaff?
Oh,
is that name familiar to you guys? Hank Hanegraaff or something like that?
Mm-mm.
No,
it's like the Bible Answer Man. He had a radio show where people would just call in and ask Bible questions, and he would.
That sounds familiar.
I didn't know if it had any affiliation.
Mark Levin?
No, there's a guy named Hank Hanegraaff.
Michael Savage?
Yeah, you got it. All right, moving on.
I got it. Okay, I'm tracking.
Back to George. So you accept the salvation message, and it's your antidote. It's your cure-all for your gayness. Now,
for my gayness. Everything. I mean, it was like, I had the answers to everything. Like it literally was like republicanism on steroids. Like, before, like in middle school, I was like, timid Republican, but this gave me power. Like I was able to debate my teachers. Like I quoted Ken Ham and Louis Giglio all the time. And like, just like my chemistry teacher, actually, like he and I would get into heated debates all the time. Like,
You were the kid from that movie. What's that movie?
God's Not Dead.
God's Not Dead. You were the kid. Oh.
Did you feel for a little bit like you weren't gay anymore? Like, I don't know if that's a weird question to ask, but
not at all. No, that's not no, it wasn't until like I knew that I had this secret, and I kept it a secret. So in high school, I ended up going to the college group, and because they had there was more in depth teaching, if you will, and there was one night specifically where the worship one of the leaders was going to give, one of the worship leaders was, one of the leaders was going to give her testimony, and they had broadcasted the week before. It was going to be this big ordeal, and so the pastor ended up preaching on Romans chapter 1, and this was my first introduction to it, and I was just like, oh God, like everybody knew that I had a gay brother, but they had no idea that I was, struggling with my homosexuality. And so then this was all about like, he was like explaining it, obviously not giving any cultural context, which I do provide in the book, chapter 5. I talk about homosexuality and how the church has just blown it completely out of proportion. But anyway, it was actually one of the most fun chapters to write, because I was like, "Fuck you!" Like we're going for blood. I'm gonna teach Romans chapter 1 like it's never been taught before biblically. Anyway, and so the girl came up and gave her testimony, and she was talking about how she struggled with being a lesbian, how she eventually, God cured her of it, and she ended up marrying someone. I don't remember if she had a family or kids, but she was talking about how, like God can heal you of this. And literally it was like she was talking to me. And I was just like, oh my God, like this girl's literally speaking to my soul right now, and nobody knows. And so I tried to build up the courage to be like, to talk to her and just be like, hey, like, I struggle with homosexuality too, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't that night because it was so like, I had stuffed it down so deep inside of me that because I was so ashamed of it. Like I wanted, cause like you were saying the F word, like people called me faggot all the time at school. Like it was literally like my nickname, like, and it just, it left a mark on me. I was just like, oh my God, like you can call me fat, you can call me weird, but if you called me gay, like I literally had a visceral reaction to it. It just shut me down. So that kind of started. So then like a few like weeks after that, I thought the Holy Spirit was convicting me to share my testimony with someone there. And so I ended up talking to one of the girls who was one of the leaders at the high school group, and she went to the college group. And she was like, this is a sin more suitable to talk to a man about. And I'm like, is
it? Because I might want to suck his dick. No,
sorry, right, exactly. I'm like, give me an opportunity. I mean, I don't know if I'm gay. Can I try out on you?
If I don't like it, that would be God telling me that it's all going to be okay.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
So like in that situation, I just respond with like, well, I take it all back.
Never mind.
Just
This was icky. I don't like it.
Right. Control Z. But yeah, I always I felt so much more comfortable around women. I mean, come on, did you need any more reason to prove that I was gay?
Yeah.
Exhibit 253. We already went through the alphabet. So anyway, I ended up like, I was like, well, like, can you talk to him? Because it was, sorry. So she said, talk to a man. She referred her boyfriend. I was like, can you talk to him? Give him a heads up. Oh, sure, no problem. Like a week later, I ended up going to him and saying, hey, can I talk to you? We went into the children's ministry area, and I told him, and he literally looked like a dude. Like he did not know what to do. Like,
oh no,
she didn't give him an actual heads up. She was just like, can you talk to him about something he's struggling with?
Right. She probably got his head up.
Dumb.
That's about
it. Oh my God.
So that had to feel safe and secure.
Oh, it literally, like, I swore that I would never speak about it again. Like, I literally, like, I secretly bought books on homosexuality, like, in the church libraries. Like, I made sure to, like, hide it under other books. Like, I literally was like, nobody can know this. This is my deepest, darkest sin. Nobody can know this ever again. This is so, and here's the deal, too, and I wanted to mention this as well, is that not only was homosexuality seen as a mental illness, it was associated with bestiality, pedophilia. And
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that association in and of itself. I mean, I had somebody, like, nothing phases me anymore. I remember, like, in the high school group, someone actually admitted to me that they struggled with bestiality. And I literally was like, I cannot relate to this in any way, shape, or form. Like, how is my sin associated with this? Like, because he went into the details and all that. And, I mean, oof,
oh no!
Yeah.
Wow.
I realize you want to. I realize you
sounds like an
overshare
yourself.
I will pay you to stop. Please stop.
I know, right? Literally.
I do have to ask, though, what animal was he most attracted to? No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's funny because I have a joke to that too. I was going to say, let's
see where this goes.
It reconfirmed that I am not attracted to kitty cats, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I don't want to use the derogatory term, but
God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh my word.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable, very uncomfortable.
That's an experience that a lot of people don't have, is someone coming out to them with that.
Right. Right. And that's the thing, like that association. And then, and then you throw on pedophilia on top of that. I'm like, I can't, like, I'm literally, 14, 15 years old. How am I a pedophile? Like how, it was just so strange. Like, and so having those associations, having a horrible, quote unquote, coming out, I vowed to never speak about it again. And it wasn't until college that I actually ended up, admitting that I struggled with same-sex attraction and kind of went down that road again. But
did you go to a Christian college or?
So the funny thing is I ended up, I applied to a bunch of Christian colleges like Azusa, Biola, Vanguard, got accepted to all of them. And like, I ended up like, it was so expensive. I mean, it was just so ridiculous. And so I ended up, I just ended up like, I just said, fuck it. I'm going to go to community college. I did go to Liberty University, but it was online. So I know you guys were there physically. I can't imagine what that was like.
It's fine for us. We're the target audience.
Yeah, we were exactly what they wanted.
Exactly. So proud of you today.
I do love that. Every time I tag them in any of our Instagram stories, I just get so excited when I see the scene. Like Liberty University sees it every time, and I'll never get tired of it.
I loved it. The middle finger up. I was dying when I saw that on your Instagram. It was the best.
That made me laugh.
So good. So good. I mean, could you imagine that? Oh gosh. Like,
I feel like the people who see it, I wonder, like the people who monitor their Instagram page, I feel like they're looking at it and they see all the shade that comes in daily. I bet they think it's pretty funny if they're reasonable humans.
Yeah.
I feel like someone on the other end is laughing and then everyone else is pretending. Because when we were there, and I worked there for a little while, there were a lot of just regular people who thought the place was whack. Now, they might have been like Southern Baptist in their theology, but people thought Liberty was kind of whack in a lot of situations. And we laughed at it all the time. And when people threw shade at it, it was funny. Yeah. So I feel like there's a good portion of people who work there that monitor the Instagram. And I just picture them being like, There's another one. I feel like someone likes it, and someone's like, this isn't funny. We need to turn off comments. Yeah. Like, okay.
I picture like a cat lady in the corner with a cigarette in her, just like, yeah, another one, like.
Now, like when you said, so you were saying that like you had trouble at, in your earlier school periods and stuff like that, connecting and making friends and finding like, community. Did you ever have like a point where you felt that community in a meaningful way, like within the church, or did you just kind of always feel on the outside of things?
That's a good question. It's so funny because I've heard both of you speak about this as well, and I felt the same way, like this imposter syndrome, like where it was like people would talk about hearing the audible word of God, or speaking in tongues, or healing or anything like that, and I always felt like the odd man out. I mean, it didn't become relevant. Like, so when I first got plugged in, I felt amazing. Like, like the cool kids were speaking to me at the youth group, and then I found out they were talking shit about me. But I mean, so it goes, but I definitely, there were moments where I would I would try to one up. Like, it was like, this girl would come up and talk about how she healed somebody, of a tumor. So like I ended up going to Israel, and like they were like the pastor was, and I was a senior in high school at the time, and the pastor was talking about the gifts of the Spirit. And I was like, I want to get the gift of healing. And it wasn't out of this like, desire to actually heal people. It was to like one up somebody and just be like, look, I healed someone in Israel, like it was like, just like this, like weird. Yeah.
If I could like, just cure somebody's diabetes, that would be legit by anyone's estimation.
Yeah.
But I need test results,
That feeling resonates with me so hard, dude. Just like, because there's this feeling of I believe it and I'm in it for the right reasons, but there's also like you're looking for that validation, right? If this happens through me, then no more doubts, no more questions. I'm on. Like,
yeah.
And then you hear those stories. So I was part of this charismatic group for a bit, and I remember hearing people talk about stories of healing and miracles and things like that. I don't entirely know what to make of them, because I still believe they're good people and they don't make stuff up. And I'm not sure what to think. But then it's always little things though, right? Like this person, went to the dentist and had a cavity, and they couldn't afford it, and we all prayed that the cavity would go, and then they went back and there was the next scan showed, or next x-ray showed no cavity.
Yeah.
Maybe something was just a little piece of dust was caught in the x-rays. Like it's easy to kind of explain little things like that away, but the way that it gave those people drive, I remember feeling like I was really missing out, not being able to experience that with them. And I'm like, if I can just get that, then I'll know. There's no more questions or doubts. And I'm sure there still would have been. I don't think that would have satisfied me the way that I thought it would. But I don't know if you feel similarly or differently, but
100%.
Or if you had that healing experience, like, did you get that? Did you have those moments of validation?
It 100%, literally the two things that like when I left the faith, like the two things that kept me grounded to the faith was prophecy and the gifts of the Spirit. Like I was like, if the Bible was true about, in Isaiah where it, prophesied about Jesus, all that. And then, I read some books about it. I was like, oh, okay. Anyway.
And then you realize it doesn't. It's just actually about something that literally happened at that time.
Yes.
Like it was about something that had happened. Exactly.
Right. Literally so like Babylon, and like, God's going to smite, Nebuchadnezzar, all that stuff. And it's just like, exactly. Then you you listen to like real history and, it's like, so that was like, whatever, but gifts of the Spirit. Like, I just remember this girl in the youth group saying, I was in Africa. I put my hand on the girl or on this woman, and I literally felt the cancer subside. And that still to this day sticks with me. But what's helped me with that is I have a friend. So I went through this like phase of like LA spirituality. I was like wearing crystals and doing all this BS, just like pretty much like the Christian version in the secular context, where it was this is the absolute truth. Subscribe to this, pay this amount, blah, blah, blah. But I was introduced, and she's actually one of my best friends, and I actually had her on my podcast. She was my first interview. She revealed to me that people in the secular realm can tap into those types of, energetic, like it's about energy, matter and energy, like, that's what the universe is made up of. And like, we're made up of matter and energy. And like the way that she describes it to me and the way that I see it in her life and how she's able to prophesy and how she's able to enact the quote unquote gifts of the spirit, even though she has no association with Christianity whatsoever, allowed me to have some sort of peace in knowing that, oh, okay, like, these people, whatever you believe in, my belief is that they were operating on a higher frequency that is what Jesus was. It's just that they subscribe to a belief system that tells them that Jesus is the only way, when it's like, well, no, God is actually also in you too. Like, and anyway.
Yeah, I think there's some of that stuff. We just recently, like, we're talking about this too, because we had a guest on, Jesse Kale, and he talked about a lot of that kind of stuff, like just feelings and inklings and just strange occurrences and stuff. And, he kind of sees this ribbon of spirituality around all these different events in his life and everything. And I feel like it's weird. It's like the older you get, the more you start to realize that, like, the feeling that you get where you feel like you want to explain that away and invalidate it is like it's a dumb urge. Good for him that he sees that kind of stuff and he feels it and he's connected to something. Who cares whether or not these occurrences are going on because there's some sort of spiritual energy there that's like driving it, or if it's just coincidence or whatever. Like, it makes him happy. He's living a really, exciting, fulfilling life. And like, you don't need to figure out what is going on there. Like, you can just let a person enjoy it. You can enjoy it yourself if that's what you want. Yeah. But like, it's that continual like feeling of, well, I need to know for sure that I know exactly what's happening here. I need assurances and certainty about everything around me, or else I can't feel at peace with, myself and the world and my viewpoints and stuff. I don't know. It's a hard thing I don't know if we ever really get out of it. It's just kind of one of those things you have to check yourself on all the time.
I love that. It's funny because I definitely 100% agree with you in that, where it's like, it's almost like once we detach ourselves from an absolute, it's like anything is possible. It's like whatever you believe in is fine, but it's like when there's a defensiveness, it's usually out of fear. And that's the synopsis of my Christian life, is that when I was defensive about something, when I was trying to prove that Jesus was real, like reading The Case for Christ and all that stuff, it was
Shout out Lee Strobel.
Man, we're just knocking out all the sponsors already. But it was a threat to something that if it was false, then that meant that other things were false, which means that homosexuality wasn't a sin, which meant that I was actually gay, which meant that, oh my God, like, and so it's like, it's just propagated by fear. I think a lot of that is just, it's that desire to try to control the narrative and just say, no, this is what it is. This is, and I have to catch myself with that a lot too. Like, there's a lot of times that I have absolutes about things, and I have friends that call me out on it and being like, I don't know about that. Can you explain a little bit? And then it makes me realize, oh wait, I'm operating from a place of fear, because if this is wrong, then a part of my identity isn't right.
Yeah. Like, your world view is this like Jenga tower that you feel the urge to protect all the time, because if you pull out that bottom brick, everything's going to fall apart. And it's like, well, I mean, you mentally control the gravity that pulls on that Jenga tower too, Yeah. And like, things can change and those pieces can shift around. But if you're not continually like pulling that thing towards the earth, then, it doesn't it doesn't unravel your entire life when you find out something that you believe is wrong or that. And I think that's a lot of why Christianity fell apart for me, was because it was all so like, the fundamentalist view of those things is like, it's so dependent on like every piece of it being true. And I mean, that's how they taught it. They would literally say, well, I mean, if the Bible isn't the inerrant word of God, then why this and why that, you know? Yeah. And when you start picking pieces out of it that you just can't pretend that you agree with anymore.
Yeah.
All of it just unravels.
Yeah. You get to this point where you recognize that other people can have a different lived experience, and that doesn't, like, you don't have to like correct it or reframe it through a different lens for them. They can just have it. And there's good ways to live your life and bad. Like, you recognize people who are destructive and making bad choices. You recognize people who are really tapping into something and living into something more beautiful. And everybody thinks they're on the right path. So like, I'm not saying there isn't right, there isn't wrong, there isn't a better way to live or a worse way to live, but like, there's a lot of nuance and complication to why people are the way they are, think the way they think.
Yeah.
And just to figure out how to navigate that in a way that can kind of push people towards something more life-giving or beautiful is great, because you recognize when people are like fully bought into something destructive. Like, take QAnon, right? People who are fully bought into that, but then you get to know, I just read this really wonderful piece about these people who it had to do with that Wayfair. Remember the Wayfair thing of the people thinking kids were being sold into slavery through like Wayfair cabinets and shit? It had to do with the kids who dealt with the fallout from it. Because their pictures were plastered all over the internet and they weren't kidnapped. They had ran away, but then came home, but there was never any like, we found them articles, right? There was only the missing persons ones that were still floating around. So these kids like couldn't even really leave their house without fear of like people at the grocery store being like, we found them. And like, it was a wild article and it was wonderfully written. And I wish I could reference it. And I want to go back and find it and even like post it, because
I would love to read it.
Yeah. So these kids were like, but then one of the things they wrote about was a woman who got really invested in this, and she had battled addiction issues, but she was the sister of a woman. So they talked about how she was a wonderful aunt and the way that she cared for her niece, and they humanized her in a beautiful way. And she was one of the people who died at the insurrection. She was trampled. And that, like, how hard it was for the family to be like, and you know, to be like, we know her, like she got sucked into this stupid fucking thing, and it's awful and sad, but she was a wonderful person who cared for her niece, who she was a beautiful person who had her issues. And the way it was written was wonderful. The way they humanized everyone in this scenario. So like, you read a piece that it's beautifully written as that, and you recognize that like, there's so much going on in this world, and there's so many different lived experiences, and there's so many reasons people gravitate towards different things, and some are right and some are wrong, but you can't just say that, right? You have to like,
I thought you were maybe going to say that like she abducted one of those kids to protect the story's narrative.
Oh, I didn't go that dark. I brought this back.
That would have been cooler. Everything's relative. I would have gone with that route.
Like JFK showing up in Dallas. Like,
that's because you want to listen to a podcast about it later, Casey.
Right.
Anywho, what type of crystals are best for Christmas?
Yeah.
The Christ crystal.
All right, let's what pushed you into like ministry? Like, so I think we left off with you going to community college, and what got you into ministry from there? Like, how'd you find your way into that?
Yeah, so I had a couple year fallback. I was backslidden for a couple of years. Got into the party scene, and I was a hot mess. I mean, my poor sister.
Going through TSA to just bring your water through.
Exactly. Actually, there's a couple stories of that too. Yes. Involve glory holes and anyway, and rubbing alcohol.
That's a world that I don't know. It's such an interest.
I'll opt for the pat down.
Divulge what you want.
Yeah, right. Like you were saying, pick your own adventure. But yeah, I ended up like my poor sister. She ended up like moving to the college town that I was in, and she ended up, she saw me as this radical Christian. She came to a youth group with me in high school and all of that, but she never really like, it never stuck with her. Like, I mean, it's funny because I always saw her as like weak and stuff. Like, she is the strongest woman I idolize my sister. Like, to this day, like, she is literally the most like the most important person on earth to me. So anyway,
That's awesome.
so she ended up like dealing with my drunken ass, like picking me. We almost got a DUI. Like, I was 20 years old, like, and she ended up coming to pick me up, like rescued me on multiple occasions. And then I had two acting out, I ended up like alluding to the glory hole and all that. I had two incidences within a matter of 2 months where I acted out on my homosexuality.
Yeah.
And that was like the point where I was like, okay, I need help. I need Jesus again. And so like I was in an English class, and he was like a vegan, like liberal, probably libertarian. I don't know, but he could not like offend me more than like, because of my politics and also my supposed religion. And these two guys were in class, and they ended up like, coming up to me, started debating the teacher and stuff. So they came up to me and they're like, hey, like, you're really good at the Bible very well, where do you go to church? It's kind of like the Christian version of, asking, what do you do for a living? And I ended up, saying, and to be honest with you, I'm in a backslidden state. I don't really have a church. And so they introduced me to a church, this church that I ended up committing, about 4 or 5 years of my life to. So long story short, ended up recommitted my life to Jesus, got introduced to Exodus Ministries. That's when my friend and I ended up going to one of their conferences in Nashville. And it was like, that's where I got introduced to conversion therapy. That's where like, I have stories.
Wow.
It was like what you were talking about earlier about where like, molestation and all that. I remember one of the guys sitting at the table, and he was talking about how he was molested as a kid, like by I think it was either his father or his uncle or something, like really tragic. But like, I remember like even in the breakout sessions, the narrative was that most likely you were molested. So I tried to contrive a story about somebody molesting me. Like
really,
I was like gasping for straws, like literally, like, and then they would talk about how, it's usually because of an over domineering mother or a passive or macho man, father. And like my mom was over domineering, but I kind of cut emotional ties with her, and and my dad was a bit more passive. But like, so I created these narratives that like, something must have happened to me, because the guy at the table was talking about how his brain had blacked it out, and then one time like God revealed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, I was just going to ask about that. It's like, oh, and if you don't remember it, or if you can't think of it, it might have happened, and you just blacked it. Like that is, I got no words for it.
It's disgusting. It's so disgusting. Like, I just remember like going through the Rolodex of people in my life. Was it my trumpet teacher? Was it, my father? Was it that, like literally like, and I was like, God, please reveal it. I remember praying, like, reveal it to me, reveal what happened to me. I'm ready for this. I'm ready to heal from it, and like, I'm just
to look at everyone in your life with that level of suspicion and have to go through it is so awful. Oh
absolutely.
My God.
Absolutely. Like I remember like interviewing my aunt and asking her like, do you remember anything? Like, did your father, inappropriately touch my dad, or, like all this shit, like
you have to trace the like the cause, right? I mean, the cause is an important part
all
of
the way back to Abraham.
Yeah, exactly. All the way back to Abraham. That's right.
Did your son see you naked when you were drunk? Just like Father Abraham? You're like, what are you talking about, dude? No, that was Noah. I'm sorry. Oh, was it Abraham? It happened to everybody back then.
He loved
Well, I was on
horses.
the Ishmael side, so
awkward.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been great. Thanks for your time, George.
How blasphemous! Oh my God, that's amazing. But yeah, I created all these stories, like about my mom, my dad, all this bullshit, and like nothing was ever revealed to me. Like it was, literally like, so I created stories to explain my homosexual experience. And then I went to one of the breakout rooms, and that's where I learned about conversion therapy. Ended up like connecting with the guy there. He was in New York. He was also very handsome, by the way. I have daddy issues, so he definitely was provoking those. I'm telling you. Side note, like purity culture, I'm as horrible as it was for a gay man, it was probably one of the best things, because like men could take their shirts off and like I wouldn't be held accountable for looking at them. Like anyway, it's horrible. Like not to minimize purity culture, because it's a bunch of bullshit.
Straight celibate dudes do weird stuff too. That energy comes out somewhere.
Yeah.
I saw that at Christian college for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I remember camps. Like they would like take the bunk beds or the bedding off the bunk beds and like start boxing. Like, I have a story with that too, but it's off subject. But anyway. Anyway, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times for a struggling homosexual.
So was your experience with Exodus like AA conference, or was it something that went on longer than that? Did you have any what was the aftermath of Exodus?
Yeah, so I mean it was like conversion therapy on steroids. Like I remember like doing these breakouts. So after the conference, I ended up like I was going to do conversion therapy with the presenter, and then I found out he was like $300, like, and he could do it over the phone. Like I mean, he had a great business going on. Let's just say that. Like
wait,
respect the scam, bro.
People would pay this guy $300 to talk to him for how long on the phone?
For an hour. Like
what?
Ridiculous. Yeah.
Fuck.
It's a lucrative.
You can't take
business.
it with you, Sam.
Yeah.
You can't take it with you. I might as well give it to me.
Literally. That's, oh my God. Like 100%.
I'm not going to take this mansion and this Bentley with me. Come on. It's
right.
Just, look, and really, it's just a car. It gets you from point A to point B. It looks maybe different than your used Corolla, but it's just still a vehicle.
Right. And
that God's blessed me with.
And he clearly doesn't know his demographics. It's like, come on, you're preaching to gay men. Like, we know you're wearing Armani shoes. Like, we know you have the money, like, come on.
Dude, I love religious scams because they're the only ones, like, no one is patting Goldman Sachs on the back and they're like, thank you, brother. Thanks for everything you do for us. Like,
absolutely.
Bernie Madoff never got to like share his testimony and give standing applause from a congregation, like long after we've all realized that this is like not working the way he said it.
Oh my
no
God.
One's finding out where like everyone invests in their 401k and retires, and they're not praising Jesus for it. It's just
right.
Bernie's main problem is he should have gotten a TV show on TBN.
Yep.
He would still be around. He'd still be in business.
Yep. Should have started a nonprofit. What was he thinking?
Yeah, church model would have saved that guy a lot of trouble.
Literally. I look at Jim Baker and all of them.
I know.
The list goes on and on. But yeah, so I ended up, I was like, there's no way in hell I could pay for this. So I ended up like finding a conversion therapy specialist in my area. He was like $150 or something, and then insurance kind of helped out with that. So
insurance helped out with that. What the fuck?
Yeah, I know, right? Right.
I don't think insurance still.
That must have been Blue Cross, right?
Exactly. Before we were progressive.
I was like, I take insurance, sure.
Right. Before
all of them.
LGBTQ families on our marketing material.
That's incredible. So this, and you said this was local, just local counselor.
Exactly.
What the heck kind of place was this?
He was a straight white, cisgender male. He taught me about like, it was like a like the rubber band, the shock, not shock therapy. It was like a dumbed down version of shock therapy. Every time I had a homosexual thought, he would always talk about, my family lineage, like same bullshit from the conference, just on longer sessions and more intimate. And I was just like, I mean, at the point where like I was at a point where I was like, I don't need a family history lesson. I need practical things to cure my homosexuality. That's all I need, you know? So like shortly out, like I ended up, I don't recall how long I went to him. It couldn't have been more than like 6 or 7 months, but I was introduced to the discipleship program at the church. And so I got paired up with somebody, and he was like, he was like this, like, blue collar worker, like, probably didn't even know how to spell homosexuality. Oh, I did. Sorry, I did leave out a detail. At Exodus, I learned about same-sex attraction. So that was like the term that they use to detach yourself from homosexuality or being gay. It was like, oh, you have a struggle. It's cute. It's not something that you identify with.
Cute.
It's cute. Cute little pet name. But yeah, so I ended up like doing the practices of conversion therapy, with this mentor, and eventually, I mean, I ended up like going to Bible study and like, plugging myself. Like this church was like, it was literally like misogyny on steroids. Like there were no co-ed Bible studies. You couldn't hang out with women past like 8 or 9 o'clock because the parents of sin, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's a long story on that. But Bible study, ended up working my way up, ended up going to their Bible college. It was not accredited. And that's kind of where I started my pastoral stuff. So anyway, I can go into more detail about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it. Churches love that. I was familiar with a couple of different like unaccredited like church Bible college. That's a weird line that they have.
Mm-hmm.
It's like these bigger churches will have like it's hard to call it a college. Yeah, it's similar, but you go through the like probably usually a 2-year program or something like that, and you study the Bible, and then anyone within that sphere, right? Any church that accepts that theology will be like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
They can regurgitate everything we want them to. Perfect. And that's
exactly.
kind of like the narrative for church. It's like, did we turn out people just like us? And they're not exactly looking for free thinkers in a lot of.
Absolutely.
Do you have to pay for it?
Oh yeah, it was like, oh my God, I forgot how much it was expensive too. Like it was, it was a satellite. It was Calvary Chapel Bible College. It was like it was a satellite campus, and it like, Chuck Smith. We had to do Chuck tapes, all that, and every it was like by unit. I forgot how much it was. I'm sure it was like 300 or 400 a unit or something like that. Something crazy.
Hopefully there's some sort of discount. It's like enter the promo code STR8 at checkout for 10% off the conversion therapy for students.
Right. Oh my God, I love it.
Throw me a bone here, guys.
That's gonna be our promo code for our talk to Captain Cecil's about that. Enter promo code STR8.
Oh my God, I love that.
I'm curious about
you read. Go ahead, Casey.
So with conversion therapy, like I'm curious about how long do a lot of people stay in it? I'm sure it varies, but like, is it a long-term thing? And how do they keep you in? Because there's got to be like this mix of, I mean, if it's all doom and gloom and this is you and you're bad and this is all your fault, like people kind of reject that. Is there like the lineage stuff and all of that? Is that like a way of deflecting it and saying like, this is not all your fault. This is something that's happened to you as well. Like there's got to be a balance there that keeps you like bought in and feeling good about it when it's not really giving you any positive results.
No, that's a very good question. It's funny because it was so hypocritical, because it was like, on one hand it was like environmental, like your family, the way you were raised, the way that your father and your mother were, or lack thereof, is a byproduct of your homosexuality. But then it was like, but it's a sin, and it's like, so then whose fault is? So there never was really any clear guidance on whose quote unquote fault was it, but it was always taught that like you have to take into consideration your environmental circumstances and deny the lust, if you will. Like it's just like any type of sexual sin. As far as like how long people do it, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I got bored by it. Like it was just one of those things where I was just like, okay, great, it is the same shit over and over, different face. I mean, like, you know, like
it's like, oh, it's either because of your parents.
It's like listening to Alex Jones, and he's like, after the break, we're going to get into the documents. We're going to go through all of these. And like, you never hear about the documents. It's just, are we getting to the documents, Alex? Like, no, we're doing a commercial for Super Male Vitality real quick.
Right. Well, I was shocked that Luke Wilson was in it for 4 years. Like, that blew my mind. Like, I couldn't imagine like how much shit he had to purge from his brain for being indoctrinated for that long with that bullshit.
He's a bit of a bookworm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gotta be grueling.
Yeah.
The environment Liberty puts you into is like, you have so many, like, there's so many like plausibility structures that make you feel like it's so reasonable. Like, you're just so complete. I guess, I mean, you were completely surrounded by it too. I don't know. It's just like this Liberty environment. It's like, if you're going to stay there, there isn't really, you can't really leave it. Like, you can't, if you stop going, you're like, you don't care about your recovery. It's like when an alcoholic stops showing up to AA, you're like, whoa. Something's going on here. And that they kind of make it like that. And you're so invested and involved in that community, and they know you so well that when you stop showing up, it's like people are then going to be like, hey, is everything okay? Like, how are you supposed to pull out of that?
Yeah. And the interesting thing about that is that my understanding with AA, it's taught by people who have gone through that struggle. Like, nobody that I have ever known is someone who, you know, like, it's always these straight white cisgender men, you know, like,
who just are so passionate about gay people recovering.
Like, literally, like almost like they're hiding it, and they're like trying to, like, you know, like, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. I don't know. Like, you know, it's like, how do you like choose that as a career path? Like, you have to have some sort of like inkling for, you know, it's homosexuality or something.
Well, sales is the same way. Like, there's so many guys that are in sales that I've talked to, and that I know, and like, you try to pin them down to answers on like, how did you make this happen over here? And the more they talk, the more you're like, they have no idea. They're just riding the wave. You know, like, this happened. They're getting a check. They're cool with it, and it's a fake it till you make it sort of thing, or fake until it breaks, I guess.
Till they close it down. Like, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I remember. I mean, there was shit like. I mean, they would be like, you know, we'll try dating women, or, you know, like, just stupid shit where it was just like, no, like, there's like, we're not going from 0 to 60 like this. Like, you know, it's like, cure me of homosexuality and then I'll date women. You know,
like, what an unfair thing to do to a lady too.
Right.
You know,
yes. And I have a story about that.
It's like, we're not okay with premarital sex, and you definitely don't want to cross the line. But have you squeezed a boob?
Right.
Honest question. We'll forgive you if you have. If you haven't, we'll give you a pass. Just take this card. You have to have this card in your pocket. Otherwise, it doesn't count.
Exactly. It's like the Hail Marys for the evangelicals. Grab a boob.
Oh, my God. Oh, well, I'm afraid of derailing this more, but I got to hear your story. You said, I have a story. I got to hear it.
So I ended up, so this was while I was, so I was the outreach pastor. So, like, as you know, it's like, you know, the president, the vice president, you know, senior pastor, you know, assistant pastor.
This is after you finished your Bible college? This is that, like, you did that program, or while you're in it?
While I was in it. So I started Bible college, and then I started to gain the attention of the leadership team even more. I got their attention in Bible study because I was like, you know, I knew a lot of shit, you know. Thank you, gotquestions.org, another sponsor moment. And so, like, I ended up, so a lot of the senior pastor ended up taking some people to Europe to plant a church there. So the then senior pastor, or assistant pastor, became the senior pastor. He was looking to fill his cabinet, and I was chosen as the outreach pastor. And I was like, oh fuck, like, you know, it's kind of like. Like, I love the youth group. Those kids were amazing. Like, if any ministry or anything that I did that I felt alive, it was like being there for those kids. Cause, like, they were like I remember like two of the kids that I discipled, like their fathers were either not present, or they were like, you know, absentee parents, if you will.
So those kids became gay, obviously.
Exactly. Like they fit the character mold. It was like, and I taught them at an early age about same-sex attraction. But no, like they like, because I felt genuine. Like it was like I'm helping out, you know, these specific kids. So when they told me I would be the outreach pastor, I was like, okay, fine. Like I'll do this. And then he told me that I was going to be a pastor, or that my title would be outreach pastor. And so I was like gung ho about it. I started creating like, you know, harvest festivals, like, you know, Christmas weeks, like all this shit, like just doing all of that. Simultaneously, I was going to the Bible college. And then, so about a year into being a pastor, he would do these like weekly meetings with me, and they started off great. Like they were like devotionals, like he was like, you know, investing in me, like da da da. And then as time went on, it started to get more and more kind of weird. And I talk about all of that in the book, but I won't bore you with those details right now. But there was a moment where he pulled me into his office and he's like, hey, like, you know, I want to ask you about your personal life. Have you been dating anybody? And I'm like, hell no. You know, I'm like, nope, I'm good. I'm building my ministry. I'm doing my thing, you know. And it was suspicious because I was, you know, 22, 23-year-old, struggling with same-sex attraction, not even engaged, let alone married, you know. So it was like, there was big concern there. And so after, like the first meeting, it was just kind of like, you know, well, have you considered da da da? I'm like, no, we're good, you know. And then like the next week, he pulled me in again, and he's like, hey, have you considered about, you know, what we talked about? And I'm like, what did we talk about? And he's like, you know, about dating. So then we went down, like it literally became like a Christian mingle like session where it was like, no joke,
the worst,
no joke, like went down a list of available women in the church that I could potentially court. And I'm literally like in the scene, like, you know, I like coming up with every excuse for every single woman. And there was finally one of them, and she's Sarah in the book. And I was like, okay, fine. Like she's in the youth group. Like we, you know, she's quiet. She's submissive. You know, she's a Proverbs 31 wife, you know, that bullshit. Like,
yeah. Dude, he got so desperate that he ran through everyone and then actually started naming married women. He was like, let's just
wait, isn't that your wife?
Look, I'll let you, just for fuck's sake, dude. Show me that you're not gay. I'm gonna watch you have sex with her. That's not my fucking fantasy.
That's what happened to the Falwells.
Yes, exactly.
he was literally trying to like mentor a young man out of his same-sex attraction. Like, bang my wife and see if you still like dudes.
Multiple times.
I come all over myself in the corner, don't worry about it.
Right, exactly.
Oh my God. I gotta change my pants. The good news is I'm sorry. I genuinely am sorry.
Oh God, now I have like gay. Jerry Falwell's like Jr.'s like cum face in my mind. It's like, oh, could you imagine?
He doesn't have like a wide degree of facial expression variation.
He doesn't. So it looks a lot like his convo face.
Yeah, like like that vacant, you know, I just took a Xanax on a flight look. That's kind of what he's frozen at. It's like they're just
like he just woke up and realized he's in a space with thousands of people. He's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Right. Why is my zipper down? Oh my goodness. So great.
So what do you think they told this girl to make that happen?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think okay, so there was one girl that apparently had the hots for me, and I was like, absolutely not. Like, you know, I didn't see her that way. Like, she was like my sister, you know, like just super fun. And so like, I knew that's a good question. Actually, I don't know if she actually was pre-warned, if you will, because like I started like he was teaching me how to court her, and I'm wondering if like her disciple ended up like, you know, kind of how to be courted. I don't know. Like I wouldn't be surprised. Like that's a good question.
I would love to know like the thought going through somebody's mind who has no affiliation with Christianity is just listening to this and like, what is happening? Like, is there notes here? Because
also, can we be real? Like, gay people are probably the absolute, if they were trying to court a woman, are going to be better at it than any straight guy trying to teach them how to court a woman. What the fuck does this guy think?
Some roses and
like, look, just be yourself, but don't be gay and be yourself. And then she will fall in love with you.
Exactly. And that's the crazy thing. Like, this was all image. Like, people, there was word, like, I wasn't like open about my struggle with same-sex attraction. Like, people knew, but like, it was like a smaller church and people talked and all that, but it was all about image for him. He was just like, look, this doesn't look good. Like, you're a pastor now and you're not married and you're struggling with same-sex attraction. Like, and you're right. Like the poor woman, like, I mean, she apparently had a crush on me and I had no idea about it because I wasn't looking, like it wasn't like, so like, ended up like, courting her for like a month or something like that. And literally like every single session with the senior pastor at that point was just like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, I don't know if this is right, And he would give me antidotes of, like, well, if I knew, if I didn't do it, or, just his own personal experience, all that weird shit. Anyway, ended up like committing to her. And then like 2 weeks later, after, like, we went down and sat by the docks and I told her about my struggle with same-sex attraction and like how this relationship was really hard for me. And she bursted out in tears. Poor girl. Like,
oh man,
no joke. Like it was absolutely like I couldn't imagine what she was going through. And like, but she still wanted to pursue this. And I did too, because like I thought I was Abraham, being like, literally, like I remember, I hope I could find the journal entry about it, but I remember writing about like, I'm like Abraham trying to sacrifice Isaac, like, and my, God's putting me up to this test to trust him. And I just need to persevere. And literally said that to her. I said, persevere in this. And that didn't go well.
Yeah.
Did not go well.
Poor girl, but also for you, man. That is so hard. Yeah. You've been just like put on this journey where like this is the expectation. You're expected to power through a relationship with someone. It's awful. It's so unfair to both of you. It's terrible, man.
It was disgusting. And this went on for 8 months. Like it was like, this wasn't like, okay, after a month, this is not like, I even told her that like I planned, and this was like within the month of dating her, I told her I planned on proposing to her. I just wasn't ready, because
oh no.
Because right. So once I got into a relationship with her, the conversation with the senior pastor then became about, okay, when are you going to propose? And I was like,
God damn, dude, that's so
dumb.
Literally,
that's so stupid.
Oh, it was so bad. Like, and
it's like they try to rush it before you back out, because once you're married, you're stuck.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Dude, he was so ready to write the book about how he fixed you too.
Right. I am all knowing.
This guy.
Could you imagine? Watch, he's probably now a conversion therapist somewhere. Like,
I hope he's gay. I bet he's gay now.
He's in Key West in like booty shorts, just having a great time. We can only hope.
We can only hope. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that solution though. It's like, I know you're unhappy, but have you tried making a woman unhappy? Like,
oh my God, that is brilliant.
Very fulfilling.
Very, yes. Oh my gosh, so brilliant. There's times I wondered, like the pastors, I'm like, how did you, such an amazing woman, get tied with such a douchebag? Like,
oh man, it's so sad.
Like, yeah, I think I think we've all experienced, like any church, anyone. It's like that. Wow, that pastor is like a 4 at best right. On a good day, and right. His wife's a 10.
Right.
God must be real. I'll stay in this church for the next 25 years.
In the absence of sexual chemistry, guilt will work.
Right. Instead of ordering a Russian bride, try Christianity. Like, if a gay man can date a woman, so can you.
Yeah, right. So you did this for 8 months, man. And then, God, I imagine it came to a bitter end. I can't imagine it.
Absolutely.
It's great. It's like, let's shake hands on this and just go our separate ways.
No, exactly. Right. Here's a cookie. Poor girl. Okay, so it got to a point where the senior pastor just had enough of me, because I literally, like, it wasn't even just weekly meetings. It was like texting. It was like, I don't know what I'm doing. What's going on? Like, he got burnt. I mean, he created a monster here. Like, it was just like, I feel like I'm walking in shoes that are way too big for me. Like, everything and anything I say offends her. Like, I'm offended. It's just like, it was just, so he ended up pawning me off to the assistant pastor, and I wrote a whole chapter on this guy, because this guy is like, anyway.
The assistant?
The assistant pastor. I say in the book that if misogyny was a team sport, he would be the coach, the captain, and the cheerleader. Like, this guy was well, I don't know if I said that right. Coach and cap. Anyway, it's written right. I proved it. I'm not a sports guy, clearly. Reason number 573. Anyway.
Yeah, right. Well, you're in good company, because we're not sports guys.
Oh, good. Okay. But yeah.
What's a coach do? No.
What's a coach? Yeah, right. I thought scrimmage was like an STI. Like, I
got scrimmage. I got to stay home from school.
Exactly.
I remember being in soccer as a kid and people being like, let's scrimmage. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then they're like, all right, everybody, let's scrimmage. And then they line up. I'm like, what the fuck's a scrimmage? I'm like standing out in the like middle of the fucking field. No idea what I'm doing.
Hey, dude, if you did happen to use that blue razor in the shower, I just want you to know I have scrimmage.
Right.
Scrimmage is water break, right? It feels like scrimmage is a water break.
Right. I just got tested, and I got to tell you, I got scrimmage, and you may be exposed to it too.
You're going to want to pick through your pumpkin patch pretty carefully.
Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, so I ended up like being pawned off to this assistant pastor, and literally the guy wanted, from the get-go, like even in Bible study, he wanted nothing to do with me. Like, he knew I was like this flaming homosexual, like coming into the church, fab-fibing everything. Like, it was like, so, and he was like this like gothic guy, like literally, I learned within a matter of days that like his wardrobe only consisted of a black pants, cargo pants, and a black shirt. I mean, the situation was dire.
Cargo pants are a bad sign. Yeah, right? It's like, what militia are you a member of?
Literally. Yeah, now that I'm talking about him, I'm afraid I'll put the alarm system on.
If you have too many pairs of cargo pants in your luggage, they'll flag you for extra screening, and that's a fact. That's national policy.
Apparently, it was worth it to him. Maybe he just liked the cop of Phil.
But you need cargo pants, because how else are you going to carry your Bible around?
There you go.
Those big pockets. Aww. That's what's necessary.
If you have a small one, you can put it in one of those little like phone holsters.
No, you can have your pocket New Testament, but if you don't have the full Schofield Study Bible stuffed into your cargo pants, who even are you?
Really? Right?
This is the dumbest really tangent Christian? So far, for sure.
That does remind me of a conversation we had in the church where we questioned the senior pastor was questioning the validity of Christians who read a different translation than the New King James Version, but that's a whole other story.
Oh, planting his flag there.
Yeah,
literally
getting saucy.
Yeah. But yeah, so he like got pawned off on this guy. And I actually, now that I look at him, I'm like, poor guy, he literally hated me. Like, but he always would give like very vague Bible verses. He would make you come to your own conclusion. So after like a couple weeks of talking to him, because the senior pastor went off to literally went to a convention, said, goodbye, here you go. You're his problem now. And I ended up interpreting from him that it was a good idea for me to break up with this poor girl. And I literally I skipped
got
out
him
of his
fired.
I know, right. Oh, he came after me after that. That's like, this guy was like shady as shady can get. Like, he ended up like having this vendetta because I broke this girl's heart. He had done it to this one of my roommates, Jake, who's also in the book and was the inspiration for writing the book. But like, he ended up like had a vendetta against me, and I think the senior pastor ended up like shielding me from that, because like I think he felt guilty for like how things had ended. And I mean, this poor girl like broke her heart. I mean, her heart wasn't broken for long. 2 days later she ended up dating someone else, and I'm like, okay, cool, like, here we go. But yeah, it was a very tragic situation. It just like, it really put a distaste in my mouth for all of it.
Was that your first, like, after all going through all that, was that like your first push out the door, really, do you think?
That was a drop in the bucket. There were plenty of drops. Like, I talk about that, and actually there were so many things. Like, after that point, they started controlling my social media. They controlled who I was hanging out with. They were controlling what music I was listening to. Like,
oh my God.
it was like, I would literally post it was a Bible verse from James. I think it was like James chapter 4, and it was like a verse that Calvinists use, and we were part of the Armenian faith system. And they literally, like, I posted it, and within, I would count down the seconds when I would get a call or a text from the senior pastor asking me why I posted that verse, and I needed to take it down because it revealed my Calvinistic tendencies. I mean,
oh my God, dude, that's like spiritual abuse. You've suffered legit spiritual abuse at this point. This is unreal.
Were they just trying to push you out?
I think, to be honest, like, in hindsight, I think that's what it was. When I did actually leave, I could tell the senior pastor was heartbroken. So I think what it was he was feeling the shoes of someone who was revered as a great Bible study teacher, and people in the church weren't, I don't know. He was kind of mediocre. So he was showing his authority, and I think he was picking up a lot of the rules from the prior pastor and then putting them on steroids. And I think, I mean, now, like, I mean, this isn't in the book, but like, now that I process it, I think I have a little bit more grace for him, because I think he was young as well, trying to figure things out, and his way of keeping people obedient was having these harsh rules. And so, yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I know that the assistant pastor wanted me out in a second. Like, he did. There were other people in the church that did too. They were intimidated because like I was like doing all these things, and like I was getting recognition for like, starting a juvenile hall ministry, doing homeless ministry, doing elderly, all of these things. And there were always these backhanded comments that I started to compliments that I was getting from people and stuff. So I knew shit was starting to hit the fan, and it was so, yeah, I think there was an element of them trying to push me out, but I also think that there was an element of him just not really realizing what he did.
Maybe one of those like this kid needs structure. Let's dial up the pressure, and it's sink or swim sort of thing.
Yeah, he's 22 and gay. Like, God knows where he's headed.
You gotta figure it out, or it's like they were. It seemed like they were getting impatient, with you not just figuring it out and doing what they want. Like, there's a level of control that these like types of churches want, right? They want to, and of course it's validity. We've already talked about that. Seeing the things that you want to see confirm that what you're doing is true. Like, as you mentioned, having a level of grace for them now, you can look at it from the perspective, as wrong as they are, that like they've never dealt with something like this. It's now thrown at them, and I mean, the legitimacy of their position could hinge on it. Like, also, if you leave and start going to gay clubs and whatever, it's like, oh, now everyone's gonna look at me like a failure because I couldn't do what I had to do, or people are gonna question. Probably wouldn't really question God so much. They'd just say you chose a life of sin and God gave you over to your sinful desires, because that always works when they need it to. So, but there is, I mean, again, back to that conversation of so many layers to what's going on in people's minds. It doesn't make it less dangerous or traumatizing for the people involved, but it just it's a lot.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, like I like, and I think we've all been there where it's like we go through a phase of having an anger phase where it's like, they did this to me, da da da, and I definitely had that. I mean, there were, I think 2 or 3 years where, I was just really angry because I was like, I was robbed of my college years. I was robbed of potentially finding a partner, earlier on, all these things. And then I realized like it's funny because like full circle, I'm actually thankful for my past. Like I see it as this like, cosmic event in the sense that like I needed these things to realize that um I'm good and perfect just the way I am. Like I needed to go down this route. Not to say that, it wasn't harmful and it wasn't, and it didn't hurt or anything like that. But I see the silver lining through it all and really just being like I know the Bible better than a lot of Christians. Like when they say that like I remember being on a date with a guy and he's like, like he's like, "Oh, I'm a Christian." I'm like, "Oh." And then the conversation went into this like, he started having self-hating. Like he was just like, God weeps at the side of gay parades and da da da. And I was like, can you tell me in the Bible where it says that homosexuality is a sin? Just give me one verse. And he's like, well, I don't really know the Bible that well. And I'm like, and then all shit went loose. And this was during my angry phase. And I literally ripped this guy a new asshole in a Blue Bottle coffee shop. It was just like everybody was looking at us. I was enraged, but I realized that like that was a reaction of my own. I was triggered.
Sure,
I was like, how dare you say, and then I found out through one of my roommates that he had a self-hating complex because of things that happened in his life. I was able to impart grace to him on that and understanding. But it's all a process, and that's what I've learned in this life. It's like just as the universe is expanding, so are we expanding, and we are evolving, and we are growing. And so I don't look at my past as anything as like as hurtful as it was. I don't see it as it being bad or it wasn't supposed to happen. I think it was meant to happen, and I'm better for that today.
That's like such a positive outlook on it.
It's beautiful.
It kind of reminds me of like it's starting to get cold out and stuff, and when you're coming out of summer, it's like the first day where it dips down into the 40s, you're like, God, this sucks, But I remember like the last winter that I was in Michigan, it was like the polar vortex, and we had like 33 days below zero, and it was miserable, like nothing I'd ever experienced before. But when it finally like started to go back to normal, I remember it being like 35 degrees and everyone was out without a coat on. And it was like, it was amazing. It felt like, it was the equivalent of feeling like 70 degrees, on a normal situation. But I know that's like a cheesy thing to say, that like the bad and the tough times really make you appreciate the good times. But it is true in a way.
Yeah.
It's like you find a level of peace with who you are because you had to find it. Like you had to struggle through all that, awful ideology and bad mindsets and all that kind of stuff to get to the point where you're at now. Not perfect, but much healthier than what it was,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I completely agree with that. It's like, I wish I hadn't had to go down that route, but I'm thankful that I did, like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And now you have your book, your resource. People can resonate with your story. They can find themselves in it. That's, like it or not, like countless kids are still going to grow up in that kind of environment, and they need people like you to help them see that there's a way out, that they don't have to be, that just any example or shining light that they can connect with is important. It's, so I love it. I mean, I feel like I want to just keep talking. I want to hear where this all ends, but I suppose that's, how you found your way out of the church. I guess people can read your book to get the rest of the story here, but this has been so much fun, George. I'm so glad we had you on. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This has been, I love listening to the podcast and just hearing your perspectives and what you've been through. And so to be able to like have this communal, I think there was one podcast where you're talking about where like you talk to people who've been through that experience. And you're like, oh, I get it. Like, it's just like, we're few and far between, but it's just so sweet when we get together. So thank you so much for this. I've absolutely enjoyed it.
Yeah. Is your book out now?
So we are releasing it February 14th, just in time for Valentine's Day. We're going to have a self-love push. Yeah. So it's available for pre-order now on my website. I'm trying to work with Amazon. It's been a shit show with them. I don't know. I talked to my publisher about it. I'm just like, you figure it out. So it's not on, it's on Kindle, but it's not available for hardback. It's only on my website for now.
Okay.
And where can people find you on social media and stuff like that? Like, do you have profiles that you promote?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram. I love Instagram at My Gay Church Days. I'm trying to try out Twitter. I've had some help.
It's a weird world, man. Twitter's a world that it's like
the Octagon.
You want to be front row at this like the show of your lifetime. What, crazy?
It's like the Octagon.
Yeah, no, it's like you want to be like front row at the show of the lifetime. Like my God, this is what I've lived for this moment, and you're like stuck in the back and you have to push your way to the front. Like that's Twitter.
Literally.
Like, you can't. It's like, if you want to get new followers, you have to tweet 100 times a day. You got to be funny. You got to be on all the time. Yep. You got to go viral. It's like, it's so wild. It's a weird space. I haven't quite figured it out.
I heard I went viral and I was like, wait, what did I contract? Like, I was like, it was like viral once.
I got the scrimmage again.
You got scrimmage.
God damn it. I mean, oops, sorry, God.
Yeah, Instagram's great. I'm a big fan of that one too. So your My Gay Church Days on Twitter and Instagram?
Yeah, so My Gay Church Days, Instagram, Twitter, and then www.mygaychurchdays.com. And then I'm trying out TikTok it's also My Gay Church Days, if I couldn't belabor the point. But yeah, I'm sticking with that brand.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, thanks so much. This has been so much fun. I'm looking forward to talking again sometime, staying in touch.
Please.
And I'm looking forward to the release. I'm looking forward to giving your book a read, man. I know it's going to be good.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time.